Forget everything you thought you knew about medieval history. Beyond the knights and castles, a secret world of power and influence thrived, hidden in plain sight. These weren't just craftspeople, they were a network of highly organized, clandestine societies shaping their trades and their entire world in ways you won't believe at first glance. The streets of a medieval city appear simple. Cobbled lanes wind between timber-framed houses, smoke drifts from blacksmith forges, and the rhythmic chisel of stoneworkers echoes off cathedral walls. It all seems grounded, even primitive. But what if this humble facade concealed an invisible architecture of control, one forged not by kings or clergy, but by the hands of the artisans themselves? The medieval guilds, we're told, were labor unions of their time. Bakers, masons, carpenters, and weavers, banding together to protect their wages, regulate apprenticeships, and ensure fair trade. That's the sanitized version. But buried beneath that textbook narrative lies something far more potent and far more unsettling. What if some guilds weren't just trade organizations, but vessels of forbidden knowledge? It starts with the Masons. Not the speculative Freemasons of the 18th century, but the original operative stonemasons who built the cathedrals of Europe, structures so mathematically precise and symbolically rich that modern engineers still debate how they were achieved. These builders understood sacred geometry, astrological alignments, and acoustics in ways that seem almost anachronistic. And their knowledge wasn't public. It was protected, encrypted in symbolism, guarded by ritual, and passed down only to those who proved their worth. In 1248, work began on the Cologne Cathedral in Germany, a structure so complex, it wouldn't be completed for over 600 years. The masons who worked on it operated under strict hierarchical secrecy. The plans were stored not on parchment, but in the minds of master builders. These plans often relied on proportions based on ancient harmonics and Pythagorean ratios, not standard units. Stone wasn't just placed, it was tuned. But why the secrecy? Because knowledge was power. And in a world where literacy was rare and religious orthodoxy ruled, possessing advanced geometrical and structural knowledge was a dangerous privilege. The wrong idea could be branded heresy. The wrong calculation, a threat to the church.so. The guilds developed their own languages, their own symbols, their own rituals of initiation. A stonemason's mark wasn't just a quality check. It was a sigil, a signature that bound knowledge to secrecy. Some bore uncanny resemblance to ancient symbols from Babylon or Egypt, spirals, tridents, triskelions, far older than Christendom itself. And it wasn't only the masons. Across Europe, the glassmakers of Murano jealously guarded the secrets of crystalline fusion, their recipes for stained glass known only to a few families and passed on like sacred liturgies. A master's failure to protect a formula could mean exile or death. In 1291, when the Venetian Republic moved all glass production to the island of Murano, it wasn't for convenience. It was containment. The weavers of Flanders encoded political messages in their tapestries using patterns of knots and dyes that only insiders could interpret. The goldsmiths of London, by the 14th century, had developed esoteric symbols, pentacles, labyrinths, planetary glyphs that were etched into their tools and vaults. The deeper you go, the more you realize that these societies were not merely economic, they were initiatory. Initiates weren't just taught a skill. They were inducted into a worldview. One that believed in the interrelation of craft, cosmos, and consciousness. The idea that to master a trade was to align with higher laws, mathematical, moral, even mystical. A journeyman didn't simply learn a job. He passed through an ordeal, a symbolic death of ignorance and a rebirth into knowledge. And those who reached the level of master? They didn't just wear a title. They carried the keys to a lineage. Some say those keys opened literal vaults, subterranean chambers beneath cathedrals and castles, where lost scrolls, pagan relics, or ancient tools were hidden from inquisitive eyes. Archaeologists have uncovered masons' lodges built directly into the foundations of cathedrals, complete with obscure carvings, unexplained numerical codes, and underground passages leading nowhere, or to places still unexcavated. In 2018, a dig beneath Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland revealed a perfectly symmetrical chamber sealed off since the 1400s. It contained tools, symbols, and a geometric floor pattern unlike anything in the known Christian world. What were these artisans hiding? Or perhaps more precisely, what were they protecting? Not just their techniques, but a different way of seeing the world. One that understood that sound could shape matter, that symbols could encode power, that materials held memory. Their guilds may have been medieval, but their wisdom echoed something far older, something pre-cathedral, pre-Christian, and possibly pre-human. Some researchers now speculate that medieval artisans inherited fragments of knowledge from fallen empires. Rome, yes, but perhaps even older civilizations like Atlantis, Tartessos, or the builders of Göbekli Tepe. This knowledge survived not through books, but through practice, preserved in craft, and passed on only to those who spoke the silent language of the guilds. Consider the construction of medieval locks, complex mechanical devices that rival some Renaissance innovations, or the use of cement mixtures resistant to erosion, whose formulas have been lost, or the intricate canal systems in mill towns that functioned with uncanny hydraulic efficiency, designed centuries before formal fluid dynamics was born. These weren't flukes. They were artifacts of a hidden continuity, a living current of knowledge, disguised as humble labor. And yet, the deeper you look, the more that labor starts to resemble ritual. When a blacksmith heats metal, hammers it into form, and tempers it in water, he's not just shaping iron, he's performing an alchemy. When a cathedral's rose window filters the sun into a kaleidoscope of color, it doesn't just illuminate, it initiates. Was it all coincidence, or were these artisans participants in a larger, more profound system? A system that understood that every material act, cutting, carving, weaving, gilding, could mirror a spiritual truth. That the guild itself was a temple, and the craft a sacred rite. But like all secrets, this one did not remain safe forever. As the Renaissance dawned and empires centralized, the guild's inner teachings began to fragment. Some knowledge was lost, some stolen, others buried. And so we must ask, if the artisans of the Middle Ages truly held a deeper knowledge, where did it go? Who inherited their secrets? And what traces remain, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be deciphered? The answer, it turns out, may be hiding in the shadows of their greatest works, in the patterns they left behind, the ruins they built over, and the brotherhoods they formed that still, perhaps, endure today. In the cloistered stillness of medieval workshops, where candlelight flickered against stone walls and tools hung in precise, almost sacred order, something more than labor was taking place. The transmission of a memory older than parchment, older than empire, older than the church itself, because what the guilds protected was not merely craft. It was continuity, a survival of ancient knowledge through the guise of everyday work. And those who were initiated into these societies were bound by more than loyalty. They were sworn to secrecy by blood oaths, symbolic death rites, and rituals, as cryptic as any mystery religion. Imagine the scene: a young apprentice, having worked 7 years under the silent gaze of his master, is summoned at midnight. Blindfolded, he is led down into a hidden cellar beneath the guildhall or cathedral grounds. There, amidst flickering torchlight and carved stone, he takes an oath, not just of skill, but of silence. He is shown symbols, words, numbers, many of which he doesn't yet understand. He is handed a simple tool, a compass, a hammer, a plane. But to him, it is more than a tool. It is a key to a worldview that operates on multiple levels at once. Historians have long puzzled over the layered iconography found in medieval architecture. Interlocking hexagrams hidden in floor tiles, spirals etched into choir stalls, labyrinths embedded in cloister gardens, even numeric ciphers concealed in stained glass. To most, they appear decorative. But to initiates, they were instructional, mnemonic maps to principles of geometry, balance, harmony, and secrecy. This was knowledge meant to be seen, but not understood. Take the labyrinth of Chartres Cathedral. Unlike pagan labyrinths meant to trap spirits or confuse enemies, this one had a single, winding path to the center. It served no practical architectural purpose, but it may have mirrored an inner journey, one taught to initiates as they advanced through stages of understanding. And just as the labyrinth could be walked, so too could the journey of guild elevation. Apprentice, journeyman, master, but some whisper of a fourth level, one not spoken of publicly, a role shrouded in symbols and silence. The custodes, the keepers, keepers of what? Manuscripts, relics, devices. Let's follow the trail that in 1377, during renovations beneath the Basilica of Saint Denis in Paris, workmen stumbled upon an ossuary chamber unlike any recorded. Among the bones and dust were metal tools etched with Arabic numerals, spirals, and alchemical symbols, not common in France at the time. Some believe these artifacts belonged to a secret order of builders who blended Islamic knowledge with ancient Roman technique. Hidden within the stonemasons' guild, their knowledge encoded in form, not ink. Similar anomalies emerge across Europe, in the Austrian Alps, sealed beneath the Hohenwerfen Castle, a cache of brass instruments and charts, surfaced during a post-World War II excavation. The instruments bore no maker's marks, only engraved triskelions and a curious repeated sequence, 3, 7, 12, 72. The numerology aligns not only with Pythagorean harmonics, but also with Kabbalistic tradition. How did this knowledge traverse boundaries, cultural, geographic, religious, and land in the hands of medieval artisans? One theory posits a hidden lineage, an unbroken chain of knowledge bearers dating back to ancient Egypt, perhaps even to the pre-Diluvian mythos described in Mesopotamian tablets. The builders of the medieval world, through their guilds, may have inherited scraps of this legacy, not as dogma, but as encoded technique. Not written scripture, but the living code of the hand. We see echoes in the blacksmith's forge, where metallurgy borders on magic. In medieval Scandinavia, swordsmiths like the Ulfbert forged blades with carbon levels so pure they wouldn't be replicated until the Industrial Revolution. The origin of this crucible steel is debated. The process lost. Some speculate the knowledge traveled from India or Persia, smuggled through trade routes and cloaked by guilds sworn to secrecy, or consider the cathedral builders' uncanny ability to orient structures with astronomical precision. Many Gothic churches align perfectly with solstice sunrises or equinox shadows. How? With no telescopes, no satellite mapping, no formal observatories. The answer may lie in preserved star charts and ancient Babylonian sky knowledge, smuggled into Europe by Templar hands, then protected by masons who didn't just build for the church, but watched the skies for older gods. And here the connection to the Templars grows harder to ignore. Several guild charters from the late 12th century reference the Red Order, a mysterious sponsor offering protection in exchange for loyalty. Seals found in Masons' lodges depict two figures on a horse, iconography identical to the early Templar seal. Could some guilds have been infiltrated or even founded by Templar survivors after the 1307 purge? After the burning of Jacques de Molay, dozens of Templar ships vanished from European ports. Their trails vanish, but their symbols resurface. In carving, in weaving, in maps etched onto glass, that it's possible that entire trades became protective. Cloaks for these fleeing knowledge bearers, tailors, metalworkers, mapmakers, guilds that suddenly expanded in complexity after the Templar fall. In cities like Bruges, Ghent, and Prague, guild halls appeared overnight, adorned with symbols no one could decode. Sun wheels, twin pillars, blindfolded lions. What were they hiding? One answer emerges from the testimony of a 15th century inquisitor named Matteo del Monte. In his private journals, never released publicly but quoted centuries later, he describes being shown a sacred scroll by a captured guild member in Lombardy. The scroll depicted a map, not of terrain, but of knowledge. It began with symbols of metallurgy and masonry, but led to more arcane figures: a man of light, a machine of copper, a circle that sang. Del Monte dismissed it as heresy. But modern researchers suggest it may have been a schematic, an artifact, of a long-lost device, a harmonic engine, built by master craftsmen to replicate the cosmic music described in ancient texts. Is this far-fetched? Perhaps. But then consider the structure of the guilds themselves. Nested secrecy, ranks, ritual. They mirror not only religious cults, but something closer to intelligence networks. Their encoded documents, passed hand to hand, resembled early steganography. Their secret languages, built on pattern, rhyme, and symbol, formed a matrix that excluded the uninitiated. In short, they built walls not only of stone, but of meaning. And while some of those walls have crumbled, others endure. In silence, in the heraldry passed down through obscure families, in the floor plans of lodges that no longer meet, in the old books locked in cathedral crypts that no one opens anymore. One such book is the Liber Fermentrum, the Book of Tools, preserved in fragments in the archives of Toledo. In it, tools are assigned virtues. The compass represents mercy, the hammer, justice, the chisel, revelation. But beyond its poetic veneer, scholars now think it functioned as a cipher key, a manual for interpreting the hidden functions of tools, not just physically, but symbolically, perhaps even cosmologically. This reframes the artisan not just as a worker, but as a priest, not of a religion, but of a deeper tradition. A keeper of balance in a world increasingly dominated by dogma, war, and fragmentation. A quiet resistance, encoded in stone and thread and iron. But such knowledge comes at a cost. As central governments grew more powerful, and the printing press threatened oral tradition, the guilds came under scrutiny. By the 1600s, many were dissolved. Some merged into Freemasonry. Others went underground. A few simply disappeared, taking their secrets with them. And so the question remains: if these guilds were truly the vessels of ancient knowledge, then what final secrets did they take to their graves? And perhaps more hauntingly, are those secrets still active, not in dusty books or crumbling lodges, but in the hands of those who still build with intention, who still whisper the old phrases, who still mark their work with symbols no one recognizes, except those who were taught to see? Some secrets are not lost. They are buried, not to be forgotten, but to be protected. And as we descend further into the shadowed corridors of history, beneath the tiled floors of guild halls and the sacred vaults of cathedrals, we begin to find not myths, but blueprints, not fantasies, but instructions. There are rumors, persistent and strangely specific, of chambers sealed beneath major medieval cities. Vaults no longer marked on modern maps. Places where guild initiates once met, under veiled night, to consult forbidden texts and activate what they called living machines. One such location lies beneath the city of Bologna. In 2011, after a seismic tremor cracked part of the old city's foundation, maintenance crews uncovered a narrow passage beneath a disused monastery. What they found was not a crypt, but a room constructed in a perfect octagon with acoustics so precise that a whisper in one corner echoed as a thunderous word in another. The walls were inlaid with lead strips, copper coils, and stone spirals whose purpose remains unknown. Historians dismissed it as a curiosity, but others suggest it was something more, perhaps a resonance chamber, a space designed to manipulate sound, energy, or even perception itself. Some believe the guilds knew how to shape materials not just with tools, but with frequencies. There's precedent for this. Ancient Indian texts like the Samarangana Sutradhara describe machines powered by sound, the manas that fly not with engines, but with chants and harmonics. Could fragments of such lost science have made their way westward, hidden in the looms of Flemish weavers or the compass and rule of cathedral builders? And if so, who passed it on? There are stories, fringe, yes, but persistent, of guilds interacting with entities they referred to only as the Watchers. Not angels, not demons, Something else. Knowledge bringers. Described in some obscure records as cloaked figures with glowing instruments, appearing during times of great transformation or crisis. The guilds, it seems, weren't just preserving history, they were interacting with forces outside it. Were these metaphors for insight? Or memories of something real? In 1498, a letter surfaced in the archive of the London Worshipful Company of Carpenters. Written in cipher, it speaks of the arrival of the brass man and of a chamber that hums beneath the Thames. The letter was dismissed as nonsense until 1999, when a routine infrastructure scan under Southwark revealed a void sealed with carved oak and lined with bronze. The chamber has never been officially opened, and so the silence deepens, because what the guilds may have hidden is not just technique, but technology. Devices ahead of their time, powered by principles we've either forgotten or never understood. A wheel that turns against gravity, a mirror that reflects sound, a window that opens only with a voice. And alongside these relics, something more dangerous still. Books written not in Latin or Greek, but in ciphered glyphs, echoed in the guild's own insignias. The Codex S, or Book of Bronze, once mentioned in the records of a Catalonian blacksmith's guild, was said to contain diagrams for self-operating machines powered by ambient force. It vanished in 1543 during the Inquisition's purge of technical sorcery. Another text, the Manus Crystalli, the Book of Crystal, appeared briefly in 17th century Prague, passed between glassmakers. It describes light as a living force, manipulable through shaped lenses to produce what it called the second flame. Some believe this was an early description of laser-like technology. Others call it allegory, but the guilds treated it like gospel. Where are these texts now? Some are rumored to reside in the vaults of private collectors. Others, hidden in deep monastery archives under false titles. And a few, perhaps, rest in places no one has looked because no one remembers. They exist because that, ultimately, was the guild's greatest trick. They didn't just hide knowledge from the world. They hid the very idea that such knowledge ever existed. They made their secrets seem mundane, their brilliance seem natural. And in doing so, they ensured survival, not just of their ideas, but of their legacy. It's there, in the perfect proportions of a forgotten town square, in the smooth turn of a wooden gear buried beneath a collapsed abbey, in the haunting hum of an ancient door that opens only with a song no one knows anymore. But maybe someone does. Maybe there are still quiet hands passing down sacred patterns. A father teaching a son to carve with precision he doesn't fully understand. A stained glass artist unknowingly recreating symbols from a vanished tome. A mason still marking stone with the spiral his grandfather taught him, never knowing it once mapped the stars. Because the truth is, the guilds never disappeared. They simply went deeper underground, hidden in families, in folklore, in the crafts we no longer recognize as sacred. And perhaps, even now, in the coded corners of our cities, they still gather. Those who remember, those who wait, those who build. If this journey into forgotten knowledge stirred something in you, share it. Not for algorithms, but for the quiet ones. The thinkers, the seekers, the builders. The ones who still believe the past has secrets to tell. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you're ready to go deeper, more doors await.